Sure. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Testing, testing. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Are you feeding something into ox too right now? Because I don't love this.
Right now on the National Weather Desk, weird weather patterns. It may be November, but for many parts of the country,
no jacket outside, mild temperatures.
While in the Pacific Northwest, which had an endless summer this fall.
It had been so unusually warm and dry. All of a sudden, things changing on a dime.
It's time once again to fall back. But could the U.S. do away with changing clocks for good?
It's a public health and public safety matter. My hope is the science will win.
Details on the easiest type of pollution to eliminate and why it's so important.
We can solve light pollution with the flip of a switch.
And we have more details about what to do with your Halloween pumpkin.
You don't necessarily have to get rid of it. There are actually ways that you can recycle it.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Veronica Johnson. We start every morning with big weather stories of the day, and right now, that's the severe weather that's happening across Texas and the plains. More than 5 million people may be impacted by these storms, which include the threat of tornadoes. That risk stretches from Wisconsin, upper Michigan area, all the way down to northern Texas. And tomorrow, nearly 40 million people could be impacted as that storm pivots to the east. Dallas, East Texas should be paying special attention to the weather. Well, Hurricane Lisa made landfall in Belize yesterday. Localized flash flooding is expected across the region. The eye of the now weakened tropical storm is passing just south of the Yucatan Peninsula. And while all the coastal warnings have been dropped, tropical storm conditions are expected over the next couple of hours. The calendar may now say November, but across a lot of the nation, you know what? It feels like September. Winter jackets not needed. Meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael is in Columbus, Ohio, with a look at our autumn warm-up.
Hey, everybody. Hopefully you are enjoying the start of November like myself here. No jacket outside, mild temperatures. Take a look across the entire country. Unless you live in the Rockies or the West, above normal temperatures for most of the country. Take a look at this Thursday and even into Friday, above normal temperatures. Now, that cold air does start moving a little bit farther east as we head into the weekend. However, look at this Saturday. It kind of is temperate, but then the rebound of the above normal temperatures Sunday. And how about early next week? We're looking good on Monday, looking good for most of us on Tuesday as well. Get outside. There's probably a park you haven't been to yet that you need to get outside and explore. So while we're dealing with warm temperatures across most of the country, take advantage of it here in November. Maybe check out some of the fall foliage that's still out there, because we all know what is inevitably on the way. Much cooler temperatures will be here before you know it.
Are already underway in the Pacific Northwest, including Seattle. The region had a hot and unusually dry summer and early fall. But as you saw on that map in Andrew Buck-Michael's story, changes are now underway in the Emerald City. Meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell explains what's going on.
Well, hi there, everybody. Coming here from the Pacific Northwest, where it's finally starting to cool down. We just wrapped up the month of October which in many cases around western Washington felt much more like summer than the middle of fall. Look at our temperature trends. Seattle hit nearly 90 late in the month before finally cooling down as we were approaching Halloween. It was what we were calling endless summer around here. It had been so unusually warm and dry. All of a sudden, things changing on a dime. We've got this big trough of low pressure digging over the top of the Pacific Northwest, bringing all of that cool air down from across the Canadian border. Instead of running so much above normal, now the pendulum has swung in the other direction and we are well below average. Look at where our temperatures are going around Puget Sound as the week goes on. Average highs mid-50s. We're going to be running a good 10 degrees below the curve by day, 30s at night. Aside from a warm and wet windstorm due in on Friday, a chilly temperature trend here from the PNW. For the National Weather Desk, I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell.
Well, all that snow that fell in Northern California on Tuesday and Wednesday is great news for the area's ski resorts. Most received 8 to 12 inches of snow. And while places like Sugar Bowl aren't open now, the heavy snow gives them a head start to hopefully have a nice long season. Well, now in Utah, where a sizable chunk of the state is under winter weather advisory, but in southern parts of Utah, there's a winter storm warning. The National Weather Service says around a foot of snow could accumulate there before things start to taper off later this evening and tonight. Lincoln Graves is in Cedar City, Utah now with a reminder for anyone who plans to hit the road this time of the year, whether it's for that long haul or even a quick trip across town.
They're doing their best to look out for the roadways, but emergency crews tell people they need to look out for themselves or do the best they can. When we think of people getting stranded, we often think of that happening in remote areas. The Utah Highway Patrol says that's misguided and that people need to be prepared with warm clothes in their vehicle. Getting into an accident or other trouble in the middle of town can be dangerous because you don't know when crews will reach you.
We get there as soon as we can, but depending on the size of the storm and the amount of slide-offs and accidents, it can sometimes take a while for us to get there, as well as a tow truck.
Sergeant Bambi Bay says people too often wear the wrong thing because they may be used to throwing on flip-flops or going without a coat, thinking they're just making a quick trip. If you're going to head out in winter weather, it is best to have the right stuff in your vehicle just in case you get into trouble. If people do get into any kind of trouble, like an accident, the best advice is to stay in your car if it is safe to do so, and then call for help. Ultimately, we will have to wait and see how much snow Cedar City actually gets. Of course, we're likely to get much more in the higher elevations.
Ready to fall back. Most of the nation returns to standard time on Sunday, meaning you have to set your clocks back 1 hour. The idea before daylight saving was to have more daylight in the even hours. But in recent years, there's been a push to stay on daylight saving time year-round. According to the National Conference of State Legislators, 19 states passed resolutions in the last 5 years calling for permanent daylight saving time. California voters also backed the change, but the state legislature has not done so. Federal law requires an act of Congress for states to abolish standard time. And while the Senate did pass a bill earlier this year, the House has not. Reporter Kelly Vaughn is in Salt Lake City and has more on the fight over falling back.
Lori Neeleman is a clinical psychologist. She says this time of year can be especially hard for people with seasonal affective disorder.
Light in the morning specifically is really helpful for folks who suffer.
And there are safety concerns to consider, like how now more people will be driving home in the dark. Neeleman and other medical organizations say that not switching time at all is what's best for our bodies. But they say we should have standard time all year, not daylight saving time.
And if we stayed on daylight savings time all year, in January, in December, a little bit of February, the sun wouldn't rise until 9.
She says that's a big deal as kids will be going to school and waiting for the bus in the dark, and it further impacts seasonal depression.
It's a public health and public safety matter, so my hope is the science will win, but we'll see what happens.
You may have seen this image in the news this week. It came from NASA, and some thought they saw a face in the sun. So what is it? Let's go to Columbus, Ohio for the answer.
That has a name. Hi, I'm meteorologist Marshall McPeak. You may have seen an image that came from NASA this week that looks like the sun has a face. from back in 2014. There was another one of those. This one they called the jack-o'-lantern sun. So when we see those kind of faces appearing in clouds or maybe the man on the moon, that has a name. In fact, it's called pareidolia. And that is, according to Merriam-Webster, the tendency to perceive a specific, often meaningful image in a random or ambiguous visual pattern. Something like the sun, or the sunspots on the sun, or the moon, or maybe even a piece of toast. That's pareidolia. So next time you see those faces, you'll know what that is.
We've been talking a lot about the fogginess of the season. Springfield, Illinois meteorologist Darren Leeds shared this time lapse on his Twitter page. It shows the clearing of heavy ground fog after sunrise. It's of course produced over land. The lower atmosphere cools as it comes in contact with the ground. It's known as radiational fog, and in some areas of California, it's called tool fog. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, the benefits of dark skies. Hear about the steps that you can take now to help get rid of light pollution, plus more ideas and suggestions for people still wondering what to do with your Halloween pumpkin. And now time to test your weather wit. What vegetable does a cumulus cloud resemble? A carrot? Is it cauliflower, spinach, or corn? The answer when we return right after this short break.
Hi, everyone. I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. We have some pretty warm temperatures by November standards out there today. Check out your projected highs. Most towns will be in the 60s. A few spots may even nudge 70 degrees. It's a chilly start, though, 30s and 40s early in the day today. By afternoon, notice unlimited sunshine. High pressure is cresting over the region. That will be the rule on Friday as well. I think we'll see a lot of sunshine in the Northeast. And temperatures will top out in the upper 60s to around 70. Enjoy.
I'm meteorologist Jonathan Myers, and here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region, starting off with some 50s generally about 9 a.m. by noontime, getting into the 60s and near 70 for many locations as we head into the mid-afternoon and the evening commute. Some cooler numbers north as some fair weather high pressure is a weather maker basically from central Maryland northbound. Little disturbance pushing off the coast with a shower early across the Carolinas, eastern Virginia. Those skies should clear later in the day. That's the scene here.
I'm meteorologist Vetus Reed. Here's a look at your southeast highs for the day. Temperatures are going to top out right around 71 in Raleigh, comfortable 78 in Nashville, 81 in Tupelo, looking at Mobile 82 degrees, Atlanta 74, 76 in Charleston, and then mid-80s down in parts of South Florida. Looking at a mixture of sun and clouds over parts of the Carolinas. We're getting the back edge of a system moving north. We will continue to see more dry conditions going through much of the afternoon and evening, much drier conditions and more sunshine for the next couple of days.
Before the break, I asked, what vegetable does a cumulus cloud resemble? Is it a carrot, a cauliflower, spinach, or corn? The answer, of course, a cauliflower. The National Weather Service describes a cumulus cloud as one with that bulging upper portion that resembles the chunky cauliflower. That's a good one. Here's an example of the top of some cumulus clouds. We grabbed this video here from our Nashville meteorologist, Katie Morgan. She took this while traveling over the summer. Pretty cool. Now let's check to see the weather in cities across the country today. We'll start out in Ottawa, Iowa. Cloudy conditions there. There could be a spotty shower or even a thunderstorm later today. High temperature about 75 degrees. And then we're going to head now south to South Carolina. This is Mount Pleasant, where they've got some cloud cover too this morning. High clouds. It'll give way to sunshine later today and an afternoon temperature of 76 degrees. And now even further south we go to Dublin, Georgia. Look at the beautiful blue sky there. They don't have any pollution at all, right? Later in the day, they'll get up to 80 degrees. And a look now from New Bedford, Massachusetts, where they've got some sunshine coming their way today, too. High temperatures in the mid-60s. Well, as we approach the holiday season and you start decorating your house and yard with festive lights, it's really important to understand the impact that light can have on wildlife. Emily Gracie recently spoke to the International Dark Sky Association about light pollution and some simple ways you can reduce your light footprint.
So light pollution is really any adverse impact of artificial light at night. And it comes in three main forms. The first one is sky glow, which is the brightening of the sky above populated areas. And that's caused by misdirected light scattering throughout our atmosphere. So we can't see the faint, beautiful celestial objects like the Milky Way. Light pollution also comes in the form of glare, which is basically light entering your eye at shallow angles. We've all experienced this when somebody is driving towards us with their high beams on, and it makes it harder to see and it's kind of painful. The third form is light trespass, which is light from another property or house.
What kind of damage is this doing?
Basically, every organism that's been studied is impacted by light pollution in some way. It can interfere with mating, with migration, with gathering food, hunting, all of these things that animals need the darkness for. Artificial light just totally blows them out of the water and makes it really hard to exist.
What is the dark sky movement? Can you take me through some of these solutions that you guys have?
Well, the great thing about light pollution mitigation and bringing dark skies back is that all of the efforts are completely scalable. So you can start in your own home, right? Look at your own lighting on your house. Is your light shining into your neighbor's window? Is it pointing up into the night sky? If so, just install a shield and point that light down to the task at hand. Color of light is really important as well. We really want to use warmer color light. It's lower wavelength and generally less impactful to humans in the environment. And then also intensity of lighting. So you don't want a super, super bright light where you don't need one. You only use as much light as you need and no more. And then if you can, install timers, motion sensors, or dimmers to reduce the amount of time that light is on.
All great ideas. There will be a virtual global event about the dark sky movement coming up next week. Some great speakers will be on hand, like a NASA astronaut and a cast member from Star Trek. To find out more about the free conference and to view the uncut version of this interview, go to our YouTube page and search, well, the National Weather Desk to get there. Over the coming months, some parts of the nation will experience their fair share of winter weather, and one of those locations is in western Montana. They have 4 different types of precipitation to contend with. They've got rain, freezing rain, sleet, and of course snow. Let's go to Missoula, Montana, where meteorologist Mitchell Combs breaks down what they'll see at the surface as it gets colder.
What determines what kind of precipitation we'll see at the surface? Well, variations in our atmospheric temperature are the key. Let's bring up a vertical column of our atmosphere. Everywhere you see here in blue is 32 degrees or lower, below the freezing point. Everywhere in yellow is warmer than that. All precipitation in our winter storms starts as snow in the clouds. It's really as they hit this warm layer aloft that we start to see changes. Now, starting off with rain, that snow will fall into this warm layer and begin melting. And since the warm air is all the way to the surface, we'll see rain all the way to the ground. Our next 2 types of precipitation follow a similar melting process, but the depth of the cold air down at the surface plays a key role in which we see. Starting off with freezing rain. The cold air down at the surface is very thin, which doesn't give the rain enough time to refreeze. But because all of the surface temperatures are below freezing, it will freeze on contact. This can create significant icing issues to trees, power lines, and roads, and this is what makes freezing rain considered one of the most hazardous types of winter precipitation. Now, sleet has more time in that cold layer. The rain will fall and eventually refreeze into these small little pellets that like to bounce and make a distinct pinging noise when they hit the ground. Snow, on the other hand, does not have to deal with any warm layer aloft. It doesn't melt, so we see snow all the way down to the surface. Winter weather and its precipitation types are a great way to highlight the complicated nature and the temperature variations of our atmosphere.
Well, earlier this week, she shared some ideas for your Halloween pumpkin, from preserving it to donating it. This morning we have a few more suggestions. Let's go to South Bend, Indiana, where meteorologist Lynette Grant has ideas about what you could do with those ghoulish gourds.
Now that the calendar reads November, you may be thinking, gee, what do I do with that pumpkin? Well, here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to get rid of it. There are actually ways that you can recycle it.
The Halloween pumpkin does not need to sit out and rot. There are several ways that it can be recycled.
If you haven't carved them already, certainly you can make a pie out of them, you can roast the seeds and do things like that.
For pumpkins that are already carved, as long as the pumpkin isn't rotting, the meat of the pumpkin can be used to make homemade pumpkin puree, which then goes into several recipes, including pumpkin spice lattes, pumpkin chili, pumpkin bread. The list goes on. You can also pickle the rind of the pumpkin. But once the pumpkins experience the cold, that's when they start to rot.
Certainly pumpkins don't like to be frozen. Once they freeze, they'll start deteriorating rather quick too, and same thing with heat and things like that. So the cold will eventually get them pretty quickly. It just depends on how fast it gets cold.
For pumpkins that are a little questionable, they can be left somewhere for wildlife, as many wild animals like to feast on them.
Now, if you have smaller Halloween accessories like gourds or small pumpkins, those can last a little bit longer, even up to Thanksgiving.
Mountains of Montana and Idaho got more wintry weather yesterday, and travel was tough. But the scenes were likely beautiful. Meteorologist Jed Kristoff was up in those mountains just last week, giving us a little taste of what winter has in store.
Well, a very good Thursday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. Got a little bit of rain across the plains and even some light snow out to the west here. Ahead of that, though, we've got temperatures in the 70s, very warm. Behind that, look at the highs today. Bismarck, 39, a lot colder behind this rain. And you can see that tomorrow as well. There's 40s back across the plains, but we're still in the 70s, if not 80 in St. Louis tomorrow with some scattered thunderstorms. Rain continues to move out to the east as we head into your Saturday.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Things pretty warm from Louisiana down into South Texas, even in Oklahoma. Coming in at 61 degrees this morning. We're keeping our eye out toward the west. Next big Pacific front moving our direction. That could run into a lot of Gulf moisture, making for some severe weather coming up Friday night into Saturday across East Texas. Otherwise, things are really going to be heating up today. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Well, hi there and a good Thursday morning to you, everybody. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Here comes November in the Pacific Northwest with temperatures continuing to plunge there, barely cracking 40 this afternoon out of Spokane and Missoula. Jackson Hole in the 30s near Yellowstone versus a cool 61 even in San Diego. So the entire west getting chilly. Look at the snow showers pushing out of the Four Corners region toward the Wasatch near Salt Lake and the Rockies near Denver. And that's the scene from here.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
This photo shows an example of cloud iridescence and the results of the process of diffraction. Our meteorologists in Providence, Rhode Island say this unique rainbow effect happens when ice crystals or small water droplets in cirrus clouds scatter the sunlight. Meanwhile, Missouri meteorologist Matt Gunn captured this sunset, giving off final beams filtered through this web of tree branches.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on Instagram.
Now let's take a look at some of the great content that we get from our viewers on Chime In. Here's a view of fall colors along the Tennessee River. This was taken along a perch at a nature preserve called Snooper's Rock in Chattanooga. That is so pretty. These shimmering waters were captured at Purgatory Chasm in Rhode Island. Interesting enough, there's a Purgatory Chasm State Reservation in Massachusetts. And this was taken near the border of Utah and southwest Wyoming, but it's not clear which state gets the credit here, because one thing is for sure, both areas did get some snowfall with more expected today. And we'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us on your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search at NatWX Desk or National Weather Desk, and we'll be right back. Coming up tomorrow on the National Weather Desk with the New York City Marathon on Sunday. We'll talk about how weather impacts runners and training, plus our Friday football forecast. Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Veronica Johnson. Make it a great Thursday and keep your eye on the sky.